Hey everyone, Sam Battersby with Griot's Garage, and today I'm going to tell you about the Boss Paint Thickness Gauge. The Boss Paint Thickness Gauge quickly measures paint film thickness on ferrous and non-ferrous metal substrates. This precision instrument is an essential tool if you're in the business of paint correction, refinishing, or collecting fine automobiles. Convenient features of the paint thickness gauge include Bluetooth compatibility with an iOS-based smartphone app, a 2-inch color screen with an auto rotate feature so that you never have to read upside down or sideways, accuracy within 2% of a micron, ensuring that you always get a quality reading, and this unit is switchable between mils and microns for various situations. It also allows you to record all of your data and log it in the app for multiple vehicles, giving you curve and bar charts to analyze that data when you have tons of measurement points. The gauge is ready to measure out of the box with no calibration required. However, if you do need to recalibrate it or calibrate for a specific task, all of the calibration substrates are included in the case. The auto shutoff feature and low battery mode will help prevent your batteries from dying if you accidentally forget to manually turn off the unit when you're done. Now we're going to show you two different scenarios of paint measurement. On my left, we have this Volkswagen R32, which is a relatively new vehicle. But it's been, driven a lot, stored outside, things like that. The paint is in moderate condition. This vehicle is going to be a driver, so we want to do a full paint correction on it while leaving enough paint thickness intact to prevent from clear coat failure down the road, because this vehicle is going to see the elements a lot. So we need to understand how far can we go with our paint correction before we have removed too much paint. We're going to measure some various spots around the vehicle to have a full understanding of risk areas in some of the high edges, like these contours on the hood, as well as some of the lower curves and contours where paint may be a little thicker, as well as averages across the broader, more flat panels, just to be sure that nobody's been heavy-handed in the past with a rotary or wet sandpaper. All right, so we'll go ahead and power the gauge on. Hear the audible beep when it turns on and see the loading screen. We're gonna start measuring this edge, starting at the top here. It's likely going to be thinner paint along the edge of the panel, and then we'll measure a little further inboard along this adjacent surface here, and then we'll go to the center to see how consistent it is across the whole panel. We're going to start up here in the corner. Normally these edges are going to be on the thinner side, so we're getting 109 microns, 104, 101. So this corner is going to be on the thinner side. 101 microns is equivalent to about 4 mils. So that's going to be in the average area for a used moderate condition clear coat system. And then we'll come a little further in here, and there we're getting 125 microns, 130, 118. So pretty consistent across, top to bottom, a little further inboard on the panel. We have about approximately another mil of thickness there when you're comparing centered or more centered versus the edge of the panel. And then we'll come to the very middle, 125, 119, 117. So we know it's pretty consistently in that 115 to 130 range on all of the flat, large surfaces of this hood, whether you're in the middle or on one of the sides. As you approach the edges, like mini vehicles, the surface is going to get a little bit thinner. So we know we're going to take a little more caution on the edges, as you would in pretty much all paint correction situations. Now we'll go check out an older vehicle and see what we're up against on that paint system. On the Volkswagen R32, we were really doing that paint assessment to determine how far we can go with the paint correction while still leaving enough film thickness intact to prevent clear coat failure down the road, because that car is going to be driven a lot and see a lot of the elements. On this Ferrari 275 GTS, our approach is a little different. This car has been completely restored and repainted. It's in beautiful condition. And the intention here is to show you what you would do when you're purchasing a vehicle of this caliber, or after you've purchased it and you want to understand if the paint condition is truly what it was represented to be at the sale, or that the restoration disclosed all of the bodywork and paintwork that was done on the vehicle. So we're gonna do a similar evaluation where we measure multiple spots around the vehicle. Just gonna show you a few brief spots of how we're gonna do this on a vehicle like this. So similar, you're gonna wanna find some high points where the paint would tend to be thinner. This fender top has a nice sharp peak here, so we're gonna measure up near that and see what we get. Let me switch hands so you guys can see what I'm doing here. It's essential to make sure you get the probe completely flat to the paint surface. So at the top of that peak, we have about 500 microns, so 497. So that's much thicker than what we were seeing on the Volkswagen. That's because this is aftermarket paint. Aftermarket paint is almost always going to be on the thicker side because a painter will lay down more clear coat so that they have more to sand to get it nice and flat. You know, there's typically more coats of color and clear put on during an aftermarket paint finish than during a standard OEM paint as the car is being produced. So at the top of that, we have 500. That's giving us about 600 in a slightly different spot, back to 500. So right between, I'd say 550 to 650 on the top edge of that. Those variances are gonna be caused by the sanding process, when there may have been heavier texture in an area and more sanding was done there to level that out. When we come down to the flat hood, we're gonna get much higher readings because they're not on a peak like that. So right there, we're getting 1468 microns. A little more towards the center, we're getting 1590. So, pretty similar approximately, and we're gonna have much more film thickness to work with on those broad flat paint sections where the texture removal during the refinishing process was done very nicely. This paint is very flat. There's only a very mild texture left in it. So this vehicle, we know looks to be that the restoration process was done very well and effectively. I'm not getting any overflow readings or situations where I'm unable to read the paint that could imply that there's Bondo or body filler there. Keep in mind that this gauge will only read on ferrous and non-ferrous metal substrates. So it will work on steel and aluminum. It will not work on fiberglass, plastic, or areas of a vehicle that have very heavy Bondo or body filler. So keep that in mind when you're measuring. Modern vehicles especially, if we tried to measure like the bumpers of the R32, we're not gonna get readings there because those bumpers are plastic. All right, now we've just scratched the surface of paint measurement here. So for more information on this process and the Boss paint thickness gauge, be sure to visit griotsgarage.com. And as always, have fun in your garage.